regarded as a military assistance.
Has a respondent ever protested the support prior to this case? And if the lack of protest undermine your argument now?
The respondent have protest. We have apologies. Russia government have already talked to the Kingdom of Amman, telling that the Labu people. My apologies. The government of Russia have, before bringing this case to the court, have already made a communication, a way of communication to the Kingdom of Amman already about the unlawful support. However, it emerged again after the proclamation made by the Kingdom of Amman, which will be later discussed in my submission. If the Council may continue. This support is unlawful because by the element of the principle of non-intervention. First, there must be consent. There must be consent. For it to be lawful, the support must be given a consent by the intervened state. And second, it must not be done in a coercive method or with coercive intention against the territorial integrity or the political independence of the state. Looking at the first
So perhaps still about consent, so you mentioned there's a sort of prior communication. Could you point us to a specific paragraph of that? Because the lack of protest might be interpreted as an implied consent, right?
In fact, number 23, Russia have already discussed with the Kingdom of Amman that FBM, the Free Boogie movement, possess advanced weapons, and that may be a result from Amman self-defense program. If the Council may continue with the elements of the coercion. First, regarding the consent, even though they were given the consent by the chief of the Labu tribe, Tidian, however, that does not replace the consent of the Russian government, who is the actual authority in this case. For what Amman did is bringing military support into Russia's domestic jurisdiction without consent that can result in threats against domain civil. Upon the element of coercive methods and coercive intentions, even though it was not established in the fact that Amman have given support to the Free Boogie movement or not, it can be drawn from the established facts as an evidence of intention. First, Council would like to invite Your Excellency's attention to the continued support after FBM's violence. As earlier mentioned, Amman already acknowledged FBMs using their weapons and uniform in May 2023. The usage of these instruments appear again in August 2023. During these months, Amman had the time to produce regulations or procedure to prohibit or stop the FBM movement of using the instruments provided by them. Furthermore, it was stated in the clarification of the facts that the RISP program is a continuous program, which also presumed that the self-defense program has not been stopped or halted of giving it to the Labu people until today. By doing so, still granting the FBMs, which is directly linked to the Labu people, by still granting FBMs trainings and weapons and uniform, it can be drawn that Amman has intent, and this can be used as an evidence of coercion. We would like to also discuss that attributions.
I think I understand your argument, but if you look at the Nicaragua judgment 1986 that the applicant referred to, is not just coercion sort of in the abstract. It's coerced to change what that state otherwise is free to decide on its own. So in this specific point, what Russia is free to decide on its own. The formulation of the submission talks about independent governance, and you did not mention that. So, because we have given the applicant 2 extra minutes, 1 minute to elaborate on, clarify on this point.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. To clarify on this point, what in this support, what AMRAF is trying to coerce the Russia government to do is directly linked to the internal governance because they were supporting the FBM movement. The Free Bogey movement main priority is about the independence of Labu people and the secession, which again is a threat to the domestic jurisdiction of the Russia government.
The campaign for independence alone is already a threat to the existence of the state.
Free Bogey movement is not just a campaign for independence, it is also, as my co-counsel have stated from its act, is a terrorist and it has used multiple use of force trying to coerce, on its own, it tries to coerce the Russian government. The Kingdom of Amman, by giving support to this group, is also trying to coerce the Russian government to giving up the territory of the Malco Tract. If I can assist you with any further questions, the Council would like to end my submission.
Now I would like to invite the Council of the Applicant to present the rebuttal.
The first point that the Council from Amaranth would like to rebut that was made by the Council of Rotia is that Operation Balasore targeted a weapon site, not civilians as civilians as intended. However, the strike there was no secondary source of explosion or any sort of secondary impact that expanded the destruction of Operation Balasore. The source of the extensive damage came purely from Operation Balasore. And as a result, the Kingdom of Amaranth believes that the Russian armed forces should have foreseen that the damage would have been to that extent, where it would have killed 15 civilians and also the destruction also would have impacted beyond into Amaranth territory as well. Secondly, the council also argued that Article 7.3 was not violated because those who have died were the one who attacked Rote in the first place. However, that's simply not true. As stated in the facts, the 15 civilians who died were unintended and were completely innocent. None of them can be attributed to the FBM. Thirdly, Council also mentioned that it satisfies necessity, and Council herself admits that it means that a state has no other means to suppress a threat. However, by that correct definition, it would mean that Operation Balasore does not meet the requirement of necessity, as the gap between Operation Serena and Operation Balasore was 49 days, more than enough to consider other less harmful means, as Council has argued before. Moving on to the second claim, Council also argued that the recognition is coercive. However, it is not, because the proclamation was a political statement that did not establish independence. As a result, it is not a direct coercion on Rotia's government. Secondly, Council from
So it has to be a direct coercion, indirect cannot.
Sorry, Your Excellency. Council apologizes for the mistake. Council just clearly means that it does not meet the definition of coercion, as the court have ruled in the past. On the second argument of the second claim, council also argues that the support that the MRF gave to the Lebanese people is not humanitarian aid, and the defense is also not humanitarian aid. However, there is a difference between defensive training and offensive training. As defense training teaches people to cause as less harm as possible, and it teaches those to wait, and it teaches those to only attack back or protect themselves when an attack has been launched against them. Furthermore, there's also no evidence of coercion, as there is no evidence of weapons supplied from MRF to them. Thank you.
Just clarification on Article 7.3. If I understand you correctly, you seem to be saying that any incidental harm on civilian would almost automatically violate the obligation under Article 7.3.
No, Your Excellency. Council is arguing that under the reckless behavior of Rotia by sending in a strike that was horrendously miscalculated, it disrespected and it violated and is in direct contrast of the interests and the rights of those who live there. And that recklessness is what violates Article 7.3.
Now I would like to invite to the podium the counsel for the respondent for the survey.
For the